Hi, I'm Savannah Grant. One morning, I walked into my office as a loyal employee, and by sundown, I was the target of a family that would do anything to keep power in their own bloodline. Have you ever faced people who think the rules don't apply to them? Would you risk everything to fight back, even if it meant going head-to-head with your boss and his heir? Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever witnessed nepotism at work or had to fight for respect? Let's go back to the moment the battle lines were drawn. You either fire Savannah or I walk out, and so does your legacy. Blake's voice sliced through the tension like a knife. I sat still at the long marble table, eyes locked on Conrad Whitmore. The room held a dozen board members, all silent, all watching. Behind me, the glass wall framed a pristine view of Los Angeles, but the temperature inside had dropped 20 degrees. I knew Blake would pull something eventually, but I didn't think he'd do it in front of everyone. Conrad cleared his throat. Blake, maybe this isn't. She defied a direct order. Blake cut in. She undermined my authority. She breached internal protocol. Either she's gone by noon or I'll resign along with my team. I blinked once, slowly. You want to make this public, Blake? I asked, voice calm.
Fine.
Let's do that. I opened my laptop. A few clicks later, the speakers in the room crackled, then played a clear recording. Blake's voice came through first, slurred slightly from the cocktail he nursed during that late-night meeting. Just fudge the numbers, Savannah. No one will notice. Besides, it's not like the board reads this crap. Murmurs erupted. Blake shot up, knocking over his coffee. The mug shattered, splashing across the table and onto Conrad's white shirt. He tried to speak, but all that came out was, "This is a setup." She recorded me without. Company servers auto-record every forecast meeting, I said, cutting him off. That's policy. You'd know that if you ever read your onboarding packet. A board member leaned forward. Blake, didn't you instruct finance to bypass the reconciliation protocol on Q3? Blake froze. His mouth opened, then closed. His eyes darted toward Conrad, desperate. Conrad looked pale. Savannah, perhaps it's best if we place you on temporary leave, just until we sort this through. I stood up. If you're suspending me to protect your son, you should know every document, every instruction, every violation is backed up off-site. And I won't hesitate to make it public. The room went dead silent. Then I gathered my laptop, walked past Blake, who looked like he might throw up, and stepped out. As I passed the vice president conference room, my gaze lingered on the nameplate. I didn't smile. Not yet. Outside, my phone buzzed. Email from Z&A Consortium. Let us know if you're no longer part of the company. We don't work with amateurs. You thought you could silence me with suspension? Bad move. The door clicked shut behind me as I stepped into Jared's office. Dim yellow light cast long shadows across the documents sprawled on the table. Aisha was already there, arms crossed, her jaw set. Is this everything? Jared asked, motioning to the black USB drives I dropped on the table, each labeled by month. I nodded. I opened my laptop and began projecting files onto the wall. Emails from Blake ordering finance to fix Q2 numbers. Screenshots of Slack messages demanding the marketing team adjust growth projections. And a particularly damning contract draft with a shell company out of Dubai, signed, of course, by Blake. Jared scanned the documents in silence. Then, this is enough to drag him to court. Aisha's face darkened as she zoomed in on an invoice trail. This line item bypassed compliance entirely. It's an international wire routed through a dead vendor account. That's borderline laundering. I turned toward them. I knew he was sloppy, but this is criminal. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. I opened the anonymous email. You play dirty, I play dirtier. Leave now. I passed the phone to them. Jared read it, then muttered. He's panicking. Aisha didn't blink. Good. Let him. There was a brief silence. Then I said it. We do this by the book. But once we start, there's no backing down. Jared sat up straight. We prepare a classified internal report detailing every breach. Legal, ethical, operational. And we send it directly to the board. Aisha nodded. Alongside a compliance summary and flagged violations. And we time it, I added, so it lands during the quarterly strategy meeting. In front of shareholders. We stared at the glowing screen together, a silent agreement passing between us. Somewhere across town, Blake posted an Instagram story, champagne glass in hand, captioned "Boss Life." He had no idea the ground beneath him was already cracking. Aisha broke the silence, her voice low but razor-sharp. You realize after this, you're not just challenging Blake. You're declaring war on his father. On the Whitmore dynasty. I looked her straight in the eye. Then let them feel what it's like to lose something they never earned. When power meets proof, guess who bleeds first? The rooftop restaurant glowed under the orange hue of sunset. Beverly Hills shimmered in the distance, and the jazz trio near the terrace played something delicate and slow. I spotted Evelyn Zhang before she saw me, sharp as always in her slate gray suit, posture like a blade. Savannah, she greeted cautiously, taking a sip of her citrus cocktail. Your message was intriguing. I sat across from her and met her eyes directly. If leadership changes at Whitmore, would that alter your contract with us? She raised a brow. Depends who replaces you. I slid a slim manila envelope across the table. This is why you should reconsider. Evelyn opened it. Inside, screenshots of forged emails between Blake and an offshore vendor in Taiwan, rerouted invoices, and timestamps proving my removal from critical client communication. Jesus, she muttered, flipping each page. He presented these at our last sync. I nodded. And called your CEO by the wrong name. She exhaled, sharp. He's a walking liability. And he's being protected. Evelyn's fingers tapped twice on her phone. Moments later, her assistant approached, laptop in hand. Prepare a formal notice to Whitmore Group, she instructed. Subject: conditional engagement pending leadership clarification. As the assistant began typing, Evelyn glanced at me. If you're out, we're out. I nodded, silently. We both understood the gravity. I stood to leave. Thank you, Evelyn. She didn't smile. For your sake, I hope someone up there still knows how to read. As I walked past the bar, a stranger leaned in, whispering, You're Savannah Grant, right? The one they suspended. I paused only long enough to say, temporarily. Back at corporate HQ, CEO Conrad received the email by 6:42 p.m. Attached was a second file, proof that Blake had misrepresented contractual obligations and created international exposure. The subject line? Immediate review of leadership integrity required, ZNA Consortium. Blake stormed into Conrad's office 15 minutes later, red-faced, voice shaking. She thinks she won? Let's see how long she lasts. He slammed his phone on the table, dialing a familiar media contact. Time to burn her reputation to the ground. When the boardroom goes silent, it's never a good sign for the guilty. Every seat around the polished mahogany table was filled. I stood near the wall, silent, as Jared placed a thick report in front of each board member. Aisha followed with a separate binder, compliance summary, color-coded and damning. Conrad sat at the head, hands clasped, eyes scanning the room as if looking for an escape. Blake slouched beside him, scrolling through his phone like this was just another status meeting. The chairman cleared his throat. We've received a formal letter from ZNA Consortium, along with internal reports from legal and compliance. Ms. Monroe, proceed. Aisha stood. The report details 9 confirmed violations by Mr. Blake Whitmore, including falsification of revenue reports, misuse of offshore vendors, and obstruction of internal audits. A murmur rippled through the room. One board member asked Conrad directly, You mean to say you had no idea your son was tampering with financial data? Conrad hesitated. He's young. Still learning. I almost laughed. Blake slammed his hand on the table. This is a setup. Savannah's been manipulating people behind the scenes. She's the one pulling strings in compliance. Aisha didn't even blink. She reached into her binder, pulled out a printed timestamp log, and dropped it in front of the board. All compliance workflows were locked when Blake requested override. He used my clearance, without authorization. The silence was suffocating. The chairman stood. Effective immediately, we are suspending Mr. Blake Whitmore pending further review. Additionally, we recommend Mr. Conrad Whitmore step down from his executive duties within 10 business days. Conrad's shoulders slumped. He didn't say a word. A junior assistant entered and handed out printed notices. Bien Ban Chin Tuk. The room felt like a courtroom. Blake stood abruptly. This is bull. Before he could finish, 2 security staff appeared at the door. Sir, one said, you'll need to come with us. He was gone within seconds. Through the glass wall, I saw the legal team prepping fresh binders. Outside, a tablet streamed a live feed, an international investor watching from Tokyo. Aisha brushed past and squeezed my hand. The chairman turned to me. Ms. Grant, if you have a plan to salvage our international division, bring it to us tomorrow morning. I nodded once. I already do. You can bury 100 lies, but the truth only needs one breath to rise. The room was fluorescent, sterile, humming with tension. Jared sat to my right, Aisha to my left. Across from us, the board members lined one side of the long rectangular table, eyes narrowed, pens poised. A red recording light blinked in the corner. Blake entered late, flanked by Conrad. He wore a perfect suit, smug expression, and an obviously rehearsed demeanor. I'd like to begin, Blake said smoothly. There's been a coordinated smear campaign against me, driven by internal jealousy. I've been targeted by Ms. Grant, who has manipulated the compliance process for her own benefit. I didn't flinch. Play recording B7. Aisha hit the button. The speakers crackled, then Blake's voice rang out, arrogant and unfiltered. Just tweak the Q2 forecasts. I don't care how. I'm not missing my bonus again. Blake's smirk evaporated. Before he could recover, Aisha laid a document before the board. Electronic signature authorization. Blake Whitmore, dated March 3rd. It waived contract validation for an unverified partner in Taipei. He stammered. That was standard. Jared didn't wait. He opened the binder, stood, and read clearly. Clause 14b, Executive Conduct. Any breach of fiduciary duty results in immediate dismissal. Conrad leaned forward, voice hoarse. These files, this wasn't shared with me. I turned to him. You once asked why I didn't come to you sooner. I did. You just chose not to listen. Silence. The chairman tapped his pen. Final vote. No objections. Blake Whitmore, terminated, effective immediately. Conrad Whitmore, to step down within 10 business days. A board assistant's phone buzzed. Accidentally, his speaker came on. Blake's voice snarled through the room. Make this disappear. I don't care what it costs. Nobody moved. Security arrived. Blake didn't resist this time. His eyes darted to me. I didn't blink. As he was escorted out, Jared leaned in. You didn't just win. You set the new standard. I stood slowly, gathered the last folder. A notification lit my screen. Message from Evelyn Zhang. Whatever you do next, we're with you. The chairman's voice followed. Ms. Grant, we need someone strong, ethical, respected. Are you ready to lead? I looked up. Yes, I am. They handed him power by birthright. I took mine by merit. I stepped into the executive conference room. No red carpet, no applause, just a long, silent table and 12 eyes waiting to see who I really was. My new business card lay face up in front of me. Savannah Grant, VP of Global Strategy. I didn't offer pleasantries. I looked each department lead in the eye and said, "This is a merit table now. Titles don't matter. Results do." There was a pause, then a slow ripple of nods. Before noon, I sent personalized thank you emails to every key client, emphasizing transparency, consistency, and shared values. One reply stood out, a signed 5-year renewal from ZNA, accompanied by a handwritten note from Evelyn Zhang. "You've restored our faith." Moments later, a video popped up on my screen, Evelyn herself, raising a glass from her office in Singapore. "We don't follow titles," she said, smiling. "We follow trust. Cheers, Ms. Grant." As I moved through the day, I passed by the vacant office that used to belong to Blake. The nameplate was gone, the glass wiped clean. A young intern stopped mid-step and asked, "Who used to sit there?" I didn't stop walking. Someone who thought respect was inherited. Outside, the hallway quieted as I walked by. A few employees, people who used to whisper around corners, stood and gave subtle nods of acknowledgement. Respect this time was real. Later that afternoon, a familiar face, one of the marketing analysts Blake had routinely berated, knocked gently on my office door. "Ms. Grant," she said cautiously, "do I really get to speak freely now?" I smiled. "You'd better." The board's official email came through at 4:17 p.m. Subject: Appointment Confirmation, Vice President, Permanent Role. There was no press release, no internal party, just a chair that finally belonged to someone who'd earned it. I sat behind my desk. The office was quiet, just the soft click of my keyboard and the hum of the city beyond the glass. A sticky note waited on my desk, scrawled in my handwriting from weeks ago. "Never forget who you had to become to get here." Then came the ping. An invite to speak at a global leadership summit in London. I stared at it for a long moment. Smiling slightly, I whispered, "Time to build something of my own."